You know, in the book, the examples of what uses the most water, I thought were shocking. For instance, all these ideas of getting new and diverse ways of energy, solar cells and ethanol, apparently will cause us to run out of water even faster.
It will. Ethanol is an incredible water consumer, and so is solar power, at least if it's solar by concentrating solar thermal. The problem is, one of the problems...
Okay, so this guy says that concentrated solar thermal power is a huge user of water. His name is Robert Glennon. He writes a book called Unquenchable about the water shortages, which are about to become very serious in California. Well, let's take a look at one of these plants. There's one in California. It's a solar thermal power plant, which means that you use sunlight to heat up something directly. So you use the thermal power of the sunlight to heat something up. Here is Solar One. You can type it in Google Earth, Solar One, and you end up here. And it's basically a field with mirrors that are in heliostats, which means that they follow the sun, or they can be tracked, or they can track the sun. So they move around, and by moving around they can, let's see if I can do that. They can actually point the sunlight at a single spot in the middle, and they heat that up using the sunlight, and it gets very hot. It gets 1400 degrees or 700 degrees or something like that. Because you have to imagine, instead of being hit by one time sunlight, it gets hit by several thousand times the sunlight. And there's huge power in sunlight. There's let's say 1 kilowatt per square meter optimally hits the ground. So it's all directed in the center, and something is heated up. It can be sodium, it can be oil, or it can be water, and that water is turned into steam. And the steam drives a steam turbine, just like in any old-fashioned coal-fired power plant. A coal-fired power plant is basically it's a heating part where the coal is burned. It heats water, and the steam that comes out of it is used to drive a turbine. Well, exactly the same happens here. So they put the steam turbine part of the coal-fired power plant in the middle, and they got all these mirrors. Well, the water that's used, the steam that is used in this, is usually recycled, because of course, yeah, you need water, turn it into steam. Well, the only thing you have to do is to cool it a little bit, but that already happens because it's converted, the energy of the steam is converted into electricity. So that energy is lost out of the steam, so it comes out of the turbine a little bit cooler, and then you cool it to the outside air to the point at which it's fluid, it's liquid again, and then you feed it back into the tower, and you superheat it, because that steam is superheated to about 600 degrees or something like that, back to the turbine. That doesn't waste any water. It's a closed loop. So this Robert Glennon is just talking out of his ass. And you can look at it. It's in the area. You know, there's no, well, there's some lake, but this is actually there's not much water supply here. They're usually placed in the desert. But so that these type of remarks, which are misleading and not true, usually makes me suspect that are just a monetary issue here. That these technologies, like the solar thermal power plants, are too efficient. They are very efficient. They make power at sub 5 cents per kilowatt, and of course once they're, and you can see that. Now let's go back to it. In exploitation of these plants, just go back for a second. Once you have this installed, there's power coming out of it. You don't have to truck coal to this site. You don't have to pipe oil to this site. You don't have to bring nuclear fuel like uranium or something. You don't have to enrich it and bring it to this site. All that stuff doesn't necessary, because the power comes from the sky, from the sun. And there's a huge amount of power there. So it's much cheaper in the exploitation. And this type of cheap technology is of course a big hazard for the power companies, which have power because they deliver power. I don't want to sound moronic, but so. And regarding the water problem, so you have a good solution here, and I only have 1 minute to talk about it. You have a huge desert here in Mexico, There's so much sunlight hitting the ground here, it's almost the maximum in the US, this area. Right next to it you have the sea water. And what would be more efficient to place a number of solar thermal power plants here with a thermal desalination plant and desalinate the seawater here and then bring it to the areas a little bit to the north, these areas in California, which are now fighting huge water shortages. They have problems with that. They have to stop planting because they can no longer afford the water. The water is of course, you have to arrange for that, but you can use it, use exactly what this guy is talking about. You should not use. You can use concentrated solar thermal power to generate water cheaply. And that's so, you know, there's always people that try to front run worries and thoughts in the public and spread lies, and this is one of them. Robert Glennon.